Hi guys, Dr. B here. So we are going to start chapter 8, which is related to Mendel and heredity. So you may have heard of this guy already. It's good, but we'll get into more detail. So the origins of genetics. So what theme of biology is genetics referred to? Remember we talked about a lot of these. We talked about reproduction, we talked about evolution and all that, but genetics, remember, it's related to passing on, it's referring to genes. So the passing on of genes is heredity. So genetics is going to be related to the theme of heredity. If I can actually spell it right now. So listed below are some key definitions we need to keep in mind. So a monohybrid cross is a cross between one pair of traits. P generation or is parental generation. F1 and F2 generation are first filial and second filial generation. So the parental generation are the first individuals that are crossed in an experiment, sorry. And F1 and F2 generation refers to the offspring of the parents. So who is the father of genetics? Gregor Mendel was an Austrian monk and he experimented on garden peas. That's what he looks like, or looked like, I guess. So what he did with his pea experiment, we're going to talk about his theory and the 4 different hypotheses related to it. So number 1, for each character or characteristic, an individual has 2 copies of the gene, one from each parent. Mendel's theory part 2. There are alternative versions of genes known as alleles. So an individual will receive one allele from each parent. And when we look at a couple of these, it will make a lot more sense. So just kind of bear with me with the definitions. Part 3. When 2 different alleles occur together, one of them may be completely expressed while the other may have no observable effect on the organism's appearance. So, what does this have to do with genetics? So, dominant versus recessive. So, a dominant form of a character is the one that's seen or it's expressed, and it's indicated with a capital letter. Recessive means that it's not expressed or not present, so this is indicated with a lowercase letter. Some other terms that you should be aware of, but we're going to talk about quite a bit. So, phenotype, physical appearance of a character. Genotype is the set of alleles for an individual has for a certain characteristic. So phenotype, physical, genotype, the genes. Homozygous means if 2 alleles of a gene are present in an individual are the same. Heterozygous if they're different from each other. So, for example, yellow versus green peas. Yellow is dominant, green is recessive. So notice how I'm using the dominant, like the first letter of it, to symbolize what is considered dominant. So yellow, so a capital Y is dominant. If it's going to be recessive, which green is, you have to designate that with a lowercase y. This is showing that yellow is a dominant color for peas. If you notice, if you have yellow peas, you can have 2 different genotypes. You can have a homozygous dominant, which is 2 capital Y's. Heterozygous, which is capital and lowercase. So notice that even if it is heterozygous, it still gets the gene, it's still expressing the dominant trait, the dominant form of it. Green peas are homozygous recessive, therefore it is a 2 lowercase y's. So I just kind of answered my question right here. The genotype are these right here. So I'm going to do this. What is the genotype? The genotype is this, this, and this. The phenotype is yellow and green. That's it. So purple and white flowers, kind of similar thing, but purple is considered dominant while white is recessive. So capital P for the dominant purple, lowercase p for white recessive. So again, it's kind of repeating the first one, but notice again, what is the genotype and the phenotype for these different combinations? So the genotype is the actual genes, the alleles. So what is it? It can be either the homozygous dominant, so capital P, heterozygous capital P, lowercase p, homozygous recessive, lowercase p. Phenotype is the physical appearance, so purple and white. Alrighty, so cleft chin, they're considered dominant. This is my favorite slide, obviously. So how would you designate that somebody has a cleft chin? If it's dominant, it has to be a capital C. What would the genotype be if someone did not have a cleft chin? So if somebody did not have a cleft chin, their genotype would be lowercase c. But let's kind of just throw it out there. What if somebody does have a cleft chin? Well, they can be two different genotypes. It can either be homozygous dominant or heterozygous. Maybe I should make this blue. C, or even better, C. Oh, it looks like, never mind, forget it. All right, moving on. So no hair above knuckles. So just look at your hand really quick. If you have hair above your knuckles, that is considered a dominant trait. So no hair above knuckles is recessive. So how would you designate it? Well, let's pick H for hair. So if it's recessive, it would be a lowercase letter. So what would the genotype be if somebody had hairy or like had hair on their knuckles? So it would be homozygous dominant or heterozygous, because having no hair is considered recessive. Part 4. When gametes are formed, the alleles for each gene in an individual separate independently from one another. Gametes carry only one allele for each inherited character. When gametes unite during fertilization, each gamete contributes one allele. So this means that when you have, here's sperm, here's egg. So let's say that the dad let's say that this sperm from the dad has the cleft chin, and it is, let's say it's capital C, right? Mom does not. So this egg does not have it, so it's going to be CC, something like this. So when these fertilize, you're going to have a baby that's C, most likely. So the law of segregation. Two alleles for a character segregate or separate when gametes are formed. So when an organism makes gametes, remember that gametes are sex cells like egg and sperm. Each gamete receives just one gene copy, and it's randomly done. Also, that's part of another law we'll talk about in a minute. So if you have say your genotype for hairy knuckles, whatever, is capital H, lowercase h. So that means that when gametes are formed, they're going to either have capital H or lowercase h. That's what that means. And it's done randomly too. The law of independent assortment, the alleles of different genes separate independently of one another during gamete formation. That's related to what we just talked about. So we are going to study heredity, and we're going to start with looking at Punnett squares. So we are going to do this in class when I see you all again. So be safe, take care, and hope you enjoyed the lecture. Bye.